John, when you raised any sort of player dynamics there that made you more willing to raise that 8-7? Did you feel like, there hasn't been any free betting yet?
In typical, I play with Stacy. I know he's a fairly tight player most of the time, particularly in this stage of the tournament. So when he called, that actually concerned me because I know he has.
Me too. I thought he had a big hand.
A real hand, and he did. He had much better cards than I had. We had just gone around and everyone folded, so maybe everyone's in a folding mood. Give it a shot. And 8-7 is the type of hand that is fairly well disguised. If I do happen to hit it, I can get paid off because it's not the type of hand you typically are going to open with a lot. And I typically won't open with that a lot, but I do like to mix up my play and do things I don't always do occasionally.
Then I'm curious, with ace-jack on the button against somebody who you know is a fairly wide opener, I'm curious, no 3-bet, were you under
It was one of those where it's kind of in the middle of the range. I don't really like ace-jack. It's my favorite hand to lose with. It's a subconscious thing. But yeah, I really did think about it. And again, I get at this stage of the tournament, I wanted to keep the pot a little bit lower. I thought maybe I'm ahead of him going ahead, or going into the hand, and then we'll see if I can apply pressure. And then he came out firing, which I thought maybe he had trips there.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, if I hit, and then for sure I'm going to call because he's going to c-bet. So I'll call this next one. If he doesn't slow down, then I put him more on hitting a big hand, 2-pair or better. But then if I hit one of my, and I picked up extra outs, I'm going to get his whole stack. That's kind of where I was going. Yeah. And if a spare card comes up,
your gut shot, you may have.
You would,
because you could probably.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have been able to get away with it.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. I was more curious, like the 3-bet, like it seemed like a great 3-bet opportunity on the button against the loose opener.
Yeah.
But the pot control size early.
And 5 orbits from now, I might be more, later in the tournament.
Run on the flop, yesterday when I put it out, it was an instinctual. If I would have thought about it more, I probably would have gone higher.
One thing I would say is on pre-flop, you have an extra limper in the pot.
Yeah.
And because your standard is min-raise, which lots of people do, that's not bad, but that's on the low side, you're guaranteed you're going to get her calling and probably the big blind calling because he'll anticipate that as well. So I'd probably bump it up because you have the extra caller.
Well, when he called, I was totally calling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
If he folds, I fold.
Well, he was
Small
big
blinds.
one.
Yeah.
And one of the thoughts with that, like to know your thoughts too, John, was just, you're trying to, usually I'm trying to get it to heads up. If I'm going to play, I want to get it to heads up because you have 3 people in there, even if they have a crappy hand, they have some equity in their hand, like there's some value in their hands, even though 7 deuce. So for me, that's why, you raise it up if there's a limper, you raise it up more because you're trying to get the heads up, or at least down to 3 people. Because even if somebody's in the blind, they have 7 deuce, I just want them to fold. I don't want let's say if I have 50% equity with 3 of us playing, if I get their 10% to fold, a chunk of that comes my way and that sort of thing.
It's just dead money in the pot.
And it just helps you range people better too if you're into kind of sort of what could they have versus saying, well, they could literally have any 2 cards. That's part of why I don't like limping pre-flop, because if the blinds come in, I have no idea. They could literally have any 2 cards. At least if I raise to 1100, I can take a good chunk of their garbage. I don't think they're going to be at 9-3. So if flop comes ace 9-3, I'm not really worried about 9-3. That kind of thing. And some of you maybe don't play anti-tournaments very often or at all. It just kind of changes the dynamic. Now you've got 700 chips in the middle before, now with 1,500, you got 2,200 chips already up for grabs.
Are we in expansion yet?
I would be an expansion. To me, yep.
Once the anti start, then
To me, that's kind of a key. When you get to like half the field is when I do it, or when the antis kick in. That's kind of when I start getting more intentional. And what that means, we had another seminar. What that means is generally when you start to want, for me, at least start loosening up my range a little bit, start maybe taking a few more chances. It's a chance to build up.
And I did not wash my hair.
Just a point quick on that last hand too. I mean, even people that you think are fairly aggressive players, under the gun raise is still usually pretty strong. I mean, what happens right there? If he does 3,000, what if you go to 8,000 right there, 9,000? What does he do?
Exactly.
If he check raises you on that flop,
I have ace king.
No, you have what you have. You have what you have. He check raises you to 8,000. What do you do?
Yeah, you would have folded.
Just
No,
insta
I'm
fold.
thinking I had
It's another play to have, another kind of an arrow to have in your quiver. That check raising can be super powerful. You know, against, especially if you think people are taking advantage of you, if they're betting you off of everything. Check raise once in a while.
Yeah.
Then that'll slow them down too, because what it does is maybe wins you that pot, but also in the future, they're not scared of your checks.
Yeah.
It might get you some free turn cards.
Yeah.
I think there's varying approaches to this. The approach that that seems to make sense to me is depending on my opponent. If I'm against an opponent that I feel is pretty competent, like a pretty good player, I will most likely choose a strategy that's just 100% limp or fold. So I will be calling almost every hand and choosing some hands to fold. And then with that, I will mix in some 3-bets pre-flop. So I'll have a pretty polarized, like, 3-betting range pre-flop. So if I, say for example, just to use a good example of this, if I pick up, jacks or aces or something, I'll limp in small blind. If he's a good player and like is raising a lot pre-flop, then I can punish that by 3-betting, or choose a really poor hand with maybe some. Maybe like ace-5 offsuit might be a reasonable hand to limp and then 3-bet if he's raising a lot. Because the thing about 3-betting is that it really protects your it protects you in that your opponents are going to be less likely to punish you and raise you and want to if they know, okay, well, he's capable or she's capable of coming back over the top.
Well, you're the only one that knows it's crappy.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like,
That's
it's hard to get out of that mode, though, for sure.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if it's a hand you would normally want to limp with, you might just choose to fold most of those hands.
If you're going to err on the side of.
Yeah, if you want to make some adjustments. Yeah, I think it's dicey because that type of board is pretty good for for John's pre-flop opening range. He has a lot of aces and a lot of kings. So if you want to play that aggressively, I think maybe a good strategy to use would be to check raise with it. That could be something to think about. So because we've already seen like a c-betting frequency from John in prior hands, so like you can. Meaning that you're going to have some ability to get a check raise through. If he's c-betting with a high frequency, you're more likely to get that through as a bluff. It's still a bluff. It's a semi-bluff because you have a flush draw. But I think leading out with it, he's not folding aces. He might fold some kings. But I think it plays... a little bit better as a check raise than as just as a lead out.
Especially that board, right? Because John's going to continue that board.
With that board, yeah, because John's probably continuing with any 2 cards
Yeah, with that board.
on that particular board. Yeah. I think certainly the better the opponents are, the more capable of 3-bets and stuff, the more aggressive the table is, the tighter you want to be. That's a good general line of thinking. On this particular table where there is not a lot of 3-bets, that would incentivize me more to open my range a little bit, and might persuade me to open King 10 offsuit under the gun for sure.
All in. Open to 23, call, all in for maybe 15 or so. Get some folds. Sorry, Jack, I don't right your way there. It's around 16, get you to deck out the needle.
Is this a
So you
full
fold-
back?
It looks like, I'm sorry.
And you called, right? The 23?
He called the 23, yep. Should be perfect. 16-1. Total.
Total?
Correct.
No call.
Call 16-1. Fold, right? Let's do it. 9 of hearts, ace 7 of clubs.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
show your,
Good
show
fold.
your hands. Queen 9 of clubs. Ace 10 of spades. Let's run it out here and Matt can prepare his comments. Ace 7 of clubs. I'm not going to give you the opportunity to stack them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think A7 suited is pretty close. I'd probably fold that hand to a shove.
Do you open it?
I do open it.
Okay.
Yep.
Was his call too loose?
He's 23 here.
It was just a call, wasn't it? A raise or
Right. I think that's close. Probably hold that in the low jack, hijack, and cut off. Probably call. I think it's really close though. I don't think it's terrible or anything like that. The 8-9 suited shove. I think that's a good spot for that.
What do you have, 20 bigs? 20 bigs or 16 bigs?
Yeah. No, I like that. 8-9 suited.
Ace 10 spades here. Any interest with a raise and a
I
shove?
didn't see that.
A raise, call, shove.
Yeah, I think that's just a fold.
Yeah. I guess one thing we missed maybe the initial under the gun, Jack 10 off.
I folded that.
Yeah, I think that's a good fold.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then-
Jack 10 suited.
So you said Derek's
could
call
open.
the shove.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like it was right, right in the area.
I think-
if you only call him pre, it made me feel like you were probably less likely to be getting him off. So it's basically like 13 bigs.
Did
Yeah.
you, if you thought he was weak then, did you think about just shoving, making sure you isolated?
I know I did think of that, but I didn't want to be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what makes it tough, one of the things that makes it tough is you do have an opponent behind you with like 30K or something like that.
Probably relatively even to start.
So if you think there's a chance he has a good hand behind you that would further incentivize you just to fold pre.
If he folds the queen 9, what do you think of a call here? I'm too short.
I like the call there, I think.
It's like about 18.
I was in a tournament.
Is it all back to me?
It is back to you.
No one else in the hand. This is really similar to the one earlier, but your stack size is so much bigger off fold.
Open full. Derek's. Anything else to look at here? Ace 8 of hearts on the big blind. Anything, Matt? Opening Ace 6 of spades. Shipping 16 bigs with jacks. Folding.
Yeah, I like it.
16, 17 bigs.
Yeah. One thing to consider in those spots with the A6 suited is like, what is your opponent perceiving of you? So if you're a huge stack and you've been opening a lot, and someone shifts on you, you should kind of make an adjustment in your mind to open their range up a little bit more because you've been so active. Whereas if you've been a little bit tighter and you're in early position and you open and get shoved on, your opponent should be perceiving you as having a pretty tight range. So you should be folding more, or at least perceiving their shoving range to be tighter.
Okay.
On the turn, what was the turn action again?
Bet, call. Right.
Bet call.
You just call. You just glide it behind.
Okay, yeah. So I like the bet on the turn with queens. You're pretty confident you're ahead. You want to get value from worst pairs and tens, maybe some king highs, that type of stuff.
Then check in a pretty big open.
The call on the turn,
Still
I think it's okay. I think the side, you could consider raising the turn as well. That if you raise the turn, that gives you some room to raise with like some bluff combinations too, like some club draws, some straight draws. So raising with an ace allows you to raise with some bluffs as well, which is something to consider. But the call is fine as well.
It was a smaller size too, but since I had the ace of clubs, I felt like
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like that is the reason I would consider raising the turn is because of the bet sizing.
Mhm.
If Rob had bet out a more like polarized bet, like a larger bet, I think a call is much better because Rob's kind of telling a story that he has either a strong hand or nothing if he bets larger. Where if he bets more of a small block size, he's saying he has something more close to what he has, some kind of pair he wants to get value from, but doesn't want to play a huge pot with.
Do you think the size on the end? Because I made it about 1 1/4. Like I overbet the pot.
Yeah, the river I thought was that's what I thought was the most interesting part of the hand was the river bet. Because you bet what 12,000 into like 7 or 8,000 or something.
I thought there was like 8 or 9, but yeah,
Yeah.
I was trying to make it 1 1/4.
I think. I think it's interesting. I like. I probably would choose to bet smaller, given where I think Rob is at, because what it looks to me like Rob has is, and like he has some medium type pair, and with the run out ace 10.
2 king.
And then the king on the end, it's like, okay, well, all of a sudden his marginal hands just got worse with the king. And my bluffs, my jack queen got there, my king jack king queen is now king. So it's like, what is Rob thinking I have when I bet when I bet the river? And if you bet a large sizing, I would expect him to fold those types of hands. Like I would expect queens to. I would think queens might fold on that river sizing.
Okay.
Whereas if you bet somewhere along like a block, a smallish bet size, like 1/3 to 1/2 pot, you get called more often by those types of hands.
Yeah, but he knows
Did it
that,
look bluffy?
he knows
that it was
a little bit. Yeah, I thought if I was ahead, I was still ahead.
Okay.
So when you put the chips out there, I thought, well, this is either you have it or it's a bluff. So it's very polarizing bet that you put out there. And I'm like Steve. I like to hear
Small. Right?
Yeah,
You were like,
you like to do that.
I
You
do.
like to do that.
We're playing the last hand 10-handed. So get everybody in here. Oh, we just got to fold. Oh, John decides to shift. Every party needs a hooper. All right, 11, about 12. We have 12,000 is all into
I could have
12,000.
called, but I'm not going
Play legit.
Yeah.
I said play legit.
Hey, I just
Jam and take.
I just pissed away enough chips in that last hand.
My favorite hand.
It'll be fun.
We got time for one more, right?
Steve,
guys
my
have one?
favorite hand.
2, 3, yeah. If you guys have to go, just go. We'll play one more here. Whoever wants to stick around. We can't end like that. We cannot let Somsky win. Somsky can't win the last part.
Yeah, we can't have that.
We're playing until somebody beats John in the pot. We might be here all night, but it's going to happen.
I'm going all in every hand.
I think on the another
blackjack.
point I want to
Big
make
blackjack.
about the queen's hand is if you think you're ahead going to the river, there's a lot of merit to putting out a small river bet as well.
Yeah.
If you want to get value from a 10 or like some other type of hand, there's nothing wrong with putting out a small block river bet to get called. Then if you get, it's definitely a situation where if he raises you,
24.
you're obviously folding, but worse hands probably aren't gonna try to bluff you off. They might just call or fold. So that'd be a consideration to avoid putting yourself in a scenario where you're facing a big bet, thinking, oh, I might be ahead, I might not be
Because if
ahead.
he puts a bet of 4,000 or 5,000, you're probably not going to raise that, are you?
I feel like I probably would have to
Just
call then because the clubs
Right.
came in even though I have the ace
Well,
of
and-
clubs.
Yeah. So there's a lot of there's a lot of
Probably bet like
Yeah,
5,000 or something.
yeah, there's a lot of better hand. I mean, you can even size smaller than that. You can size like
I think there was
3,400,
like 10.
3,500.
I think there's like 10 in them. Then.
Okay.
Yeah,
I had a
Bet or raise, raise.
Yeah.
4, 6. There was at least 10.
yeah. When I think of like a block bet size, I think of like 1/4 to 1/3 type of size.
So 2,500
yeah.
to 3 to 35.
Yeah.
Would you say air, if you're going to air, though, air on the side of bigger for us?
Definitely
recreational
so.
Players,
Yeah, I think
airing on the side of
people.
smaller?
The reason that I size smaller oftentimes is because I feel like people fold too much to 3-bets, so which gives me more opportunity to like increase my 3-bet frequency and then 3-bet using smaller sizings. That would be a reason to use a smaller sizing if your opponents are folding a lot to 3-bets. Whereas against better players who are aware that they should be calling pretty much everything, to a small 3-bet size, it makes sense to 3-bet larger.
And you're very comfortable post-flop play as well against many opponents.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us have struggled. I mean, in the past, I know I get that feedback a lot from people. I'm just not as comfortable post-flop, so I don't mind ending the pre-flop.
Yeah, the less comfortable you are post-flop, the larger the sizings you should be using
And more
pre-flop.
lots,